It's 8:30. It's 8:30. So we're on Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, and we're 3 lines before the end of the short lines, my Chanukah. And we talked about this. We went from topic to topic. So the second parak talks about Shabbos candles and Shabbos oils for the menorah and wicks for the menorah, and then from there we went to talk about what happens in terms of Hanukkah. So that's the excursus that begins on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph and is now on Chaf Aleph Amud Bet. This becomes the primary Gemara that actually talks about Hanukkah. So what I want to share with you before we start this is one page or one part of a sefer called Megillat Tanit. I only have it in Hebrew here, folks. But Megillat Tanit was a small listing of books that you couldn't fast on. Let's see. Let's make sure we got the right page. The front page is Ilan Yomin. Okay, I think I gave it you backwards. Okay. So it goes through all 12 months and it talks about different semi-festive Yom Tov in which you could not fast and you could not give hespedim. Someday when you couldn't give fast, and someday you couldn't fast and you couldn't give hespedim on. So these were semi-festive days. Many of them were political in nature. Some of them had miracles associated with them. After the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, all the days were no longer celebrated or commemorated except for 2, which was Purim and Hanukkah. Those remained, and as a result, in this listing is going to be the story of Hanukkah. We're going to see the Talmud is actually going to quote it. So the page I gave you is from a version I found online. This actually set up very nicely. You can read it, and I cut out and I pasted the parts from the month of Kislev. Okay, so they're actually goes through all the months, and there really are 2 different parts to this Megillat Tanit. There's it's not color coded, but the first line of each of the days you'll see is written in Aramaic, and then there's a Hebrew explanation or a longer explanation as follows. The original Megillat Tanit, here one for you. The original Megillat Tanit is actually the short first or second line, and in this case what they try to do for you is to translate the Aramaic into Hebrew, so it'd be helpful. And then there's a later addition to this. It's called in the scholarly language Scholion. I'm not sure what that means. Scholars added it. It's on the edge. There were additions that were added to Megillat Tanit, which are similar to what's found in the Gemara. So what I did for you is I pulled out the days for Hanukkah. The days for Kislev, excuse me. So we'll go through the first. There's Chav, Chav Aleph, Chav Bet, Chav Gimel. There are 4 special days on the month of Kislev. Number 1, or number Chav. The Klasa of Kislev on the 3rd day of Kislev is Natile Simon min Derasa. On the 3rd of Kislev, they took the idols out of the Beis Hamikdash's Chatzer. And this is some kind of event that happened we don't know about, but it looks like it's pre-Chashmonaim, where when they had the idols that were put there, the Chashmonaim came in. It's not clear when exactly in the Chashmonaim story was, and they removed the idols that were in the Beis Hamikdash. This is not yet the Hanukkah story. It may have been the same year. It may have been an earlier circumstance. It may have been a different time in the Chashmonaim pre-rule. Okay, so that happened on the 3rd of Kislev. Next day, and on that day, you didn't fast. B'shiva b'yom tov. On the 7th day of Kislev was a Yom Tov, and it doesn't tell us the reason for, but the addition, what's taken from the Scholion, explains that this was the day that Herod died. The day that Herod died was a very happy day for the scholars because Herod killed a lot of the Talmidei Chachamim. Herod was a political genius, but he was a very difficult person to get along with. And when he wanted to run things his way, he ran it. And if you were Talmid Chacham and stood in his way, it really wasn't good. So at any rate, so it's not even mentioned really because they were afraid initially when they put this listing together, if they would mention this was the day that Herod died, and therefore it's a semi-festive day, they probably would get censored. So it's only later on what's called the Scholion and the secondary parts that are added to it. Then you have the one that follows afterwards, Chav Bet. I'm just going through the ones that are not Hanukkah very briefly. You have on the 22nd, the 21st of Kislev, Yom Har Grizim Lo Mispeh. This is the day called Yom Har Grizim. And this is a day that not only can you not fast, you also cannot give hespedim. So this was actually even more significant. In other words, not only you couldn't fast, but a person died, you couldn't give a real tear-jerking hesped. This day called Yom Har Grizim. And what was it? This was a day when Alexander Mokdon took over the Greek kingdom. So the Kutim, who were the people that lived in Eretz Yisrael, who may have been somewhat semi-converted or probably somewhat converted, and they were there during the 7-year period when the Jews were not there and vacated the land. They moved in, or they were moved in by Nebuchadnezzar. They observed some laws, didn't observe some other laws, so they were not really 100% Jewish, and what's more important is they were not surely of the Jewish stock. They had their own different kinds of religion. It's a big question, even Chazal understood, do we consider their conversion correct or not correct? But they came along, and they said to Alexander Mokdon, or his general or his lieutenant, they said, sell to us 5 kurim of land in our Har Moriah. We want to take over Har Moriah, which is the land of the base where the Beis Mikdash was built. They wanted to create themselves as the new Israel. And when the Greeks came, so they were very concerned, the Jews were very concerned what happened, and they told Shimon-Atzadik, who was the Kohen Gadol, he dressed up in the big day kahuna, and he, together with the Akirei Yerushalayim, together with the nobility of Yerushalayim, came out to meet Alexander Mokdon, the great King Alexander the Great, or at least his general. And the story here that we have is Alexander the Great came, and they greeted him. Historically, we don't really know if Alexander himself actually came, so it's possible it may have been one of his governors, generals, who knows what it was. But what's really important, and when they came to meet him, and the Jews came to meet him, and the Kutim came to meet him as well. So the king says, what's going on? So they said, we're the people of Yerushalayim, we came to greet you. And when Alexander the Great saw Shimon-Atzadik, the high priest, in his priestly vestments, he got off of his steed and he bowed down to Shimon-Atzadik. And everybody goes, what's going on here? You're bowing down to a Jew, right? How could you do this? Okay, he's the priest, he's a Kohen Gadol, but who? Alexander the Great, you're going to bow to someone else? And he says that, and they said to him, well, every time that I would go to fight a battle, I would see this person in my dream, and he would give me success, and I was successful. And he says, like, what can I do for you? And they said, well, we're the Jewish people, and we have these Kutim, we want to take away our land to build their shrine. And the Alexander the Great, as a result, did not give them the land, or reinstated the Jewish people, or told the Jews they can wipe out the Kutim. Whatever it was, the Jewish people actually were very successful, and it became therefore a semi-festive day. And the day that this occurred, that Alexander bowed down to Shimon-Atzadik, and more importantly, upended the request of the Kutim to take over the Temple Mount, became a semi-festive day. Okay, that's the 23rd, unrelated to anything else. Now you understand when you read these kinds of stories, why after the Churban Abayis, why after the temple is destroyed, these kind of days don't really play any role, right? I mean, who cares the fact that Alexander the Great got rid of the Kutim? The Kutim don't exist anymore. Who cares that we got the Beis Mikdash? We're there. We don't have the Beis Mikdash anymore. Who cares in the day before that is the day the Horders died?
Can we say that about all of history?
You could. And
I don't mean to be
correct.
crass.
And in fact, therefore, all of history is about certain primary events that are forever, such as the destruction of the Beis Mikdash. We don't really have a day that's...
we can say the same. Who cares? I'm not going to say it, but you know what I mean.
That's what I'm saying. So consequently, the only day that we really commemorate is the destruction of the Beis Mikdash.
I got you.
If you think besides Purim and Hanukkah, which are very unique days, and for somehow have the validity of remaining because they were set as real holidays or more significant holidays. Those are two exceptions. With those exceptions, any other day that we commemorate is about Tisha B'Av, or the other fast days that are about the run-up, not the run-up, but the kind of run-down to Tisha B'Av itself. So the other events tend to get associated with that idea. One of the questions that comes up, and then we'll come to Hanukkah, was about creating a special day for Yom HaShoah. Right? Could you make a special day for Yom HaShoah to mourn and to memorialize the death of the 6 million? And the traditional approach in the Haredi world, and even Rav Soloveitchik, is that we don't make a separate day. Where do you include their mourning? You include their mourning in Tisha B'Av. You have a special day to say Kaddish, which we make on the 10th of Av Teves. which is Yom HaKadosh. That was the day that they said if you don't know when to say Kaddish, you say it on this day. But the actual all other sad days and all other sad events and destructions and persecutions become wrapped into what Tisha B'av is. And you remember that the kinnos we say on Tisha B'av are not only about destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, about all the other destruction of the Crusader destructions that occurred in the Middle Ages. And we include, in our shul, the 1 or 2 kinnos for the 6 million on that day. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that day. I'm just saying in terms of historically, theologically, you tend to look at the Churban Abayis, the day of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, as a day that we kind of put all kinds of sadness together, not choosing separate days for each. So all of these days, the days that you actually have here that we went through, are really political days. There's a whole other series of days that are not mentioned here. Just so happen to be they're not really in Kislev, and that is there was all kinds of fights between the Tzdukim and the Prushim. The Stukim, the Sadducees, who didn't believe in the oral law. These Prushim, who are our tradition, who did believe in the Torah Shabbat, they are our precursors. And many times the Stukim would try to get into control of the Beis Hamikdash. In fact, in the Second Temple era, the second half of the Second Temple era, where the Kohen Gadol would buy the position, many cases they were concerned he was a Tzduki or he was a Tzeduki, he was a Sadducee, because they were the higher class and they probably had more personal financial assets to buy the position. So there were a number of arguments that went back and forth. There were a number of halachic arguments. I don't say halachic arguments. A number of arguments, theological arguments, how to do certain things, or how to who makes the decision. Sometimes the Tzdukim had political power when they were defeated. So in this Megillat Tanit, we found certain days that they commemorated as a day that the Tzdukim by Susim, where the two groups were very similar and grouped together, were weakened. So we didn't see any of those examples. But all that you see, all these days, once again, after the Beis Hamikdash, the Tzdukim, by the way, fall out. Right? We know there's a whole bunch of different sects in the days of the Second Temple, and after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the Jews are exiled, all these other groups fall out. There's only one sect that really remains: the Nazarenes, the New Christians. That group that group is successful. You know why? Because they didn't want to remain a sect; they wanted to proselytize to the rest of the world. All the other groups were small groups and were internalized groups. They were cocooning themselves. And when the Beis Hamikdash just dissolved, and they really focused a lot on Tumah and Tahara, they had no really raise on the etcher, and they just kind of peter out. Anyways, turn the page over. We get to Shloach Hanukkah. So this is Megillat Tanit, and once we, and the reason I'm showing it to you is once we finish it, you'll see that the Gemara that we're going to learn is going to really be quoting from Megillat Tanit, and you'll recognize it right away. So this is the month of Kislev. Chanukat Timnaya Yomin. On the 25th of Kislev is Chanukah, which is Timnaya Shemoneh Yomim, Dilola Mispei Bahom, which is a day that, of course, you don't fast, and you also don't give a spedim, and that's, by the way, true today. If there's a funeral, you don't give a hesped. Like certain days, you don't give a spedim. Chol Hamoed, Rosh Chodesh, Friday in the afternoon. Our hesped, what do we do? You've been to funerals where there are these times. What do the rabbis usually do? What do the Maspedim do?
They always say we're not supposed to talk, and then they talk for an hour and a half.
Right.
That's the custom.
Right. That's the tradition.
I don't mean to be sarcastic, but people get up and they say you're not supposed to give a hesped, and an hour later they're still talking.
Why do we get away with that? Like, we're not such fake arise.
I don't know.
The answer is no one's.
My mother passed away. It was also on the funeral was on Chol Hamoed. So I got up to speak. I didn't say you're not supposed to give a hesped. I just spoke for 5 minutes, right. 5 or 7 minutes, because I'd say something.
Right. I'm sure you said good things.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm saying in general, you have to say something, but you don't. But when you go and you say no hespeds, and they talk for an hour or 45 minutes.
So there's a style of giving hespedim that we no longer have today in the modern world. You actually can see it if sometimes you go to a very Hasidish or very Haredi kind of funeral, where they get up and they cry and they yell and wow, can we go on and what's going to be and how could this happen and where is this and where is that, and it's really it's like I don't want to say it's an act, but there's a lot of action on the stage because of the way the person is actually emoting this sadness, and the purpose of this kind of hesped was to make people cry, was to probably raise emotions. Now, when I go to a funeral, I many times go to a funeral. First, I go for a funeral of a kavod hameis. But also go for the funeral because I want to hear about the person. I don't know everything about the person. Sometimes you'll hear it going paying a shiva call, but when people get up to be maspid, you learn about what the person did, and you learn positive traits. Sometimes not everything can you apply to yourself, but you learn about what the good things that they do. So as a result, our hespedim are a little bit different. So we surely don't give the tear-jerking hespedim, but we tone it down in terms of talking about the individual. And that's what happens today. So it's not only you can't give hespedim and let's talk for an hour and a half. You can't give the old style hespedim, but we want to tell you about the ideals of this person that you can learn from. There's nothing wrong with learning from the person. At any rate, Hanukkah is one of those days, or it's 8 of those days.
So what are they supposed to do? Not say anything? What's the ideal?
What used to be, they didn't say anything.
So they just bury the guy, that's it?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. The idea, by the way, of having a chapel and people sit down and listen to a eulogy and that's a very modern phenomenon.
Because he used to do it at the grave?
He used to do it at the grave. Yeah. Right, he used to do it at the grave. The idea, by the way, of having professional funeral directors, that's an extremely modern invention. This idea that there's a profession called being an undertaker. Right? It never happened. Europe, the old communities in Europe never had this. The old Eastern European communities, you had a Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha were responsible for hiring the carpenter to make the coffins. They were responsible for looking after everything. They were responsible for looking after the cemetery, or they hired someone to look after the cemetery. You didn't have a cemetery chairman, and you didn't have a funeral director and a person and a casket room and hearses and limousines. It's a whole business. It is a business, right? It is a business.
But that's what you get a bit of turnout. I mean, if you have...
Well, if you have a place to sit, you got a bit of turnout. But
Yeah,
back in the day, people used to go have a good turnout anyway. Back in the day, they didn't get married in shuls either.
Didn't know any different.
The graveyard itself wasn't that far from where the city was.
True story.
So here you're not. How many people are going to walk? You're not going to walk up to Keel Street or whatever it is.
Well, it depends where it is. So some of it is weather. Some of it's weather. Some of it we're actually very spoiled. We don't like to be outside. It's cold. People in Europe were cold the whole time. So I agree. We're not used to it. I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying by the way that having a chapel is wrong. I think they used to have many times a chapel at the cemetery. There was a building at the cemetery that they used to use.
There in Israel they have that.
Right. You see the old cemeteries still have it, but no one uses it.
Is that where the Chevra Kadisha was, or it's just actually a chapel for people to sit with?
Could be one or the other, but in many cases with a chapel, just that people could sit there to hear things, because they did not have a real chapel building like we have it, or a real funeral parlor, as the term is used. Anyways, back to the ranch here. So what happens in the story of Hanukkah? Let's go see the Hanukkah story. Think happy thoughts. When the Syrian Greeks came into the Heichal, as the word for the Beis Hamikdash, they desanctified or made impure all the shemens in the Heichal. Heichal once again Beis Hamikdash. This is the third line on the second saying. When the Chashmonaim and the hand of the Chashmonaim became strong, and they overpowered them and they beat them. They found one pach, one cruse, one jug of oil that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, Shalonitma, that had not become defiled. There was only enough oil to light for one day. Miracle happened burned for 8 days. Lashon Acheret, next year later, Kavum Shmona Yomim Lo Tovim. They set it up as 8 holiday days. And why did they? That's 8 days. Why did they make it for 8 days? So look what the Gemara says. Maru lasot Chanukah Shmona Yomim. Halo Chanukah Shasa Moshe Midma Lasa El Shivat Yomim. The dedication of the temple of the Mishkan that Moshe did was only for 7 days. And in fact, what's the third parsha in Sefer Vayikra? Vayikra Tzav Shmini. The 8th day is the end of the dedication ceremony that Moshe has, and that's the day that Nadav and Avihu are taking over. They get killed and smitten by the fire. So the actual is the 7 days Achun Chanukah Sam Mishkan. So it's 7 days they don't, the Aaron and Moshe, that Moshe doesn't go out, the Kohanim don't go out. So we have the 7 days in the end of Naso that they actually we talk about how it was dedicated. And the same thing when Shlomo dedicated his base of Mikdash, only was 7 days. Quoting from the Sefer Malachim, it was 7 7 days. V'achag shivat yomim, and the holiday of Sukkot was 7 days, or the holiday of the salvation was 7 days. Umaru lasot Chanukah zu shemoneh yom. Why was it 7 days? To Ella. Bimei Malchut Yavan nichnasu b'nei Chashmonai laheichal banu mizbeach v'sidru b'sid. That when the days of the Chashmonaim, this is the Chanukah story, they came into the Beis Mikdash, they built the mizbeach, they covered it with whitewash, with lime. V'chol shivat hayoma homintaknu b'klei shares. And for 7 days, they would celebrate it for. They would fix the klei shares to make it work. So, and it doesn't really tell us why it's for straight days then, does it really? Right? It doesn't really say this. Chanukah Beit Chashmonai L'Dor V'lama Hi Noheged L'Dor. The Chanukah of the Beit Chashmonai was forever, or for generations. Why? Shasu B'tzeitzah Mitzvah L'Vracha V'Yamru B'Halav V'Odav V'Dlik Bo Neir Tahara. They went from trouble to wide open happiness. They say Hallel, they said praise, they lit the Chanukah candles, but the Hara. Because when now here the story goes over again, and this is taken from a second source, so it's going to look like it's repeating itself, but actually there's a compilation of two different sources that were put into the Megillat Tanit. So the Yevanim went in and they defiled all the kalim. They didn't have what to light. Shiva Shipude Barzel. So according to the second part of the story here, they didn't find the menorah even. They made 7 brass shpudim spears, v'chipum butts, and they covered them with butts like tin. V'tchilu lahadlik, and they used them and they lit them. And that's how they started with 7 spears or spikes in the ground. Umaru legamar b'hem et Hallel. Why they finish off how we say the full Hallel? Lamedcha shekol chua shasa kadosh baruch hu Yisrael heim makdim lefanav b'Hallel of v'shevach. Whenever we're saved, we give thanks to God. V'cheinu amar Sefer Ezra vayenu kalam b'Hallel v'hodot l'Hashem kitov. This is the end of Sefer Ezra when they praised God. They said Hallel. They said praise to Hashem. Hilel l'mchastav al Yisrael v'cholam hirir chua gdola b'Hallel Hashem al husad beit Hashem. When Ezra comes to dedicate his temple, which is a very modest structure, they say Hallel v'yomer l'Hashem ha'yishol amcha b'chasech hatzela l'kadosh baruch hu la'asot nisim neflaot v'lana l'Hallel l'varcho shnemar l'amcha b'chasech hatzela. So it doesn't really tell us why it is 8 days, does it? I'm trying to see another version of this. Does it say anything more here? Give me a moment. Simply says they went in there for 7 days. Okay, so the version here is Maru lasot Chanukah zu shmonat yomim. Let's go back to that line here. So the Chanukah of Moshe was for 7 days. So why did they make this for 8 days? Ela bimei malchut Yavan nichnasu beit Chashmonai v'laheichal banu et mizbeach v'startu basid v'tiknu bo klei shares v'yemis askim bo shemoneh yomim. Okay, and they did this, their work to make it for 8 days. All right, so here the version is Shivat Yomim. I think this version is more correct. Okay. So I think what the Megillah Tanit is saying that they actually worked to dedicate it for 8 days, rather than the story about the miracle of the oil. Okay, mitzvah ner Chanukah ner echad ad lishlachol bayit. So once again, this is quoting really from what's going to be similar to the Gemara we had. The real mitzvah of Chanukah is 1 candle for the household. Mahadrin ner echad l'chol nefesh. Mahadrin is 1 candle for each person. Mahadrin min mahadrin is mosif in there l'chol nefesh v'nefesh l'chol layla. They had 1 additional candle per person. And Beit Shammai yomim yom rishon madlik shmona mikan ve'lapochet v'chelech. Beit Shammai says go from 8 down to 1, and Beit Hillel says yom rishon madlik echad mikan ve'echad ve'elech mosif v'holi, go from 1 to 8. And there were 2 Zakanim and Sidon, 1 followed Beit Shammai, 1 followed Beit Hillel. They each gave reasons for it. Zenotam l'dvarv, Zenotam l'dvarv, Zel mer kapari achag. This is the bulls that were brought on Sukkot, they went decreasing order. The other one said you went up. And the same then it wraps up with another quote which we will see in the Gemara if we haven't seen already. Mitzvat halakha mishatek shachama v'ashetich l'regel menashuk. The hadlaka is from this, it gets dark until people know the marketplace. Mitzvah l'nicha petach beisam b'mechutz. You put the Hanukkah candles on the window towards the house or the door facing the outside. Hayadar baliyah if you live on the second floor, the attic. Manicha b'chalon l'samach l'shut rabim. V'mitjarei min hagoyim manicha petach beisam b'fnim. And if you're afraid because of the goyim, you put it inside your house. And during a sakana, if you're afraid of the goyim, you put it against your house, not on the outside, maybe on the inside. Sakana, you put it inside the table, and the table inside, and that's it. So this is the part of Megillat Tanit that deals with Hanukkah. Some of this actually looks like it's swiped from our Gemara, and it probably was. Right? Some of it is much earlier. Some of it serves as a source for the Gemara. Some of it is taken from the Gemara and later put in to make it more full. Does this make sense? Having given you this, I want to go read the Gemara now. You tell me if you recognize the Gemara. So we're in the Gemara Chafal from a bit, and it's the third from the end of the short lines. Okay? My Chanukah. Everybody see it? Yes, my Chanukah? Hello? Chafal from a bit, 21B. Yeah. My Chanukah. 3 lines at the end of the short lines. My Chanukah. Tan Rabbanan. The rabbis learned, and you're going to recognize right away this is coming from Megillat Tanit. Okay, even though Tan Rabbanan usually means a Breita, this Breita was taken from Megillat Tanit. Here we go. B'chafei b'kislev yom ha'Chanukah timnaya inon. Lo l'misbeid b'hom lo l'sanas b'hon. On the 25th of Kislev, the days of Chanukah, 8 of them, you can't give hespedim, you can't fast. Okay, right away you recognize the signon, the style from Megillat Tanit. K'shenichnesu Yevanim lehechal, when Yevanim came to the temple building, Timu kol shmonim shebehechal, they desecrated or defiled all the oils in the hechal. Gavru malchut beit Chashmonai v'nitzchum, when the Chashmonai house of Chashmonai came and defeated them and were strong. Badkuv lo matzu al pach echad shel shemen shoemunach b'chot Moshe Kohen Gadol, 1 cruse of oil with the seal, with the Kohen Gadol seal. V'lohaya bod la lahadlik yom echad, only enough to light for 1 day. Nasib ro nes, a miracle happened. Here's where the miracle comes in. V'dlikum mimena shmona yom, and they lit for it for 8 days. We didn't see that in our version of Megillat Tanit, but this was the version that the Talmud has about this burn, the miracle of the oil. The Shana Acheret. Next year, Kavum v'Yasum Yomim Tovim b'Halel v'Odah. The next year they set it up and made the Halel v'Odah and made a Yom Tov to commemorate every year to commemorate the Chanukah story or to commemorate the Chanukah event. Okay, so this is the story. Now, what is not mentioned about the reason for the Hanukkah celebration? The victory. Right? And maybe that's why the Hanukkah story remained even after Churban HaBayit. Had a miracle associated with it. Didn't seem to really work. All the other stories were political victories, or all the other stories were about interpersonal conflict. There's no miracle associated necessarily with that. Some of them, I guess, do. The story with Alexander Mokdan, that he saw Shimon HaTzadik in a dream, yeah, it's a miracle, but it's not the same miracle as the Hanukkah story. So this becomes the source par excellence that is used and quoted for all the stories about the Hanukkah story, about the days of Hanukkah. Right? Famous question: why are there 8 days of Hanukkah? The miracle only lasts for 7 days. Do we know this question? Famous question.
Oh, because the first day.
And the first day if there's enough oil for 1 day, enough oil for 1 day, then really miracle is only 7 days. So why do we celebrate a miracle for 8 days when the miracle is only 7?
Because we're celebrating for 8.
Right. So the answer is, well, we're celebrating for 8. Second of all, there are a whole lot of other reasons. There's a pile of reasons that are offered. It's one of the most famous questions in Jewish rabbinic thought. It's possible there may not have even been enough oil for 1 day. Right, they managed to squeeze it out. So there is one version in the Ksav Yad that doesn't say Hayalam Shemen L'Ner Echad, but V'lo Hayal Shemen Afilu L'Hadlik Yom Echad, even for 1 day. Some suggest that the 1 day was for the victory. First day you don't need a miracle. First day is just a celebration of the fact that you actually dedicated the base of Mikdash and you got it back from the Syrian Greeks. Another answer is that maybe every day if you had enough oil for 1 day, what would you rather do with that? You'd rather put it in to burn one day, or wouldn't you rather have it burn less and less every day and spread it out for 8 days? So maybe they divided it up 8 ways, and consequently a little bit of oil lasted for, I don't know, the whole night. Should have lasted for 2 hours, it lasted the whole night. Or another version is, at the end of the first night, the oil came up to the top again. In other words, not that they have...
The can filled up.
The can filled up. The can filled up.
Or
That
the
you
menorah
used to
filled
fill it, or each menorah cup refilled itself. There are all kinds of variations on this kind of thing.
I have another take on Chanukah, whereby according to his sheet, you do the fold first, and then...
Well, we do the full first, right? We do that's right.
Day.
Correct. We do the
potential. He goes by the potential.
Right, but the question is, what was the miracle in the Beis HaMikdash? Not in your Chanukah menorah. Not how do you count your Chanukah menorah from 1 to 8 or 8 to 1, and Beis Shammai goes from 8 to 1, as you pointed out. But rather, what was the actual miracle? In the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, there were only 7 branches. Right? It burns for 8 days. Not burns for 8 branches. There are 8 days. So what is actually the miracle? But it all goes back to this concept of the Nes of Chanukah that is that's highlighted here in this brisa, which is really the origin goes back to Megillat Tanit. And as you and I pointed out, that this is one of 2 days that really remains Megillat Tanit after Churban Abayis. Okay, so far so good? Okay, good. So the fact that it was sealed and remained sealed indicated that the Pach Shemen had not been cracked open, and therefore has not been used. What would have happened if it would have been broken open? Why would it become Tameh?
Because you don't know.
Because it looks like actually the Goyim were considered a Tumas Goyim.
Oh.
That's one thing. Second of all, they themselves probably came into contact with dead bodies and who knows what. Second of all, the fact that it may have been used for idol worship. So the only way they could guarantee that this was shemen that remained tar was the fact that it had been sealed and sealed shut.
Wasn't it the Kohen Gadol's private stock or something?
Someone
said this. Somewhere we learned this.
You may have learned it somewhere.
Somewhere, I don't know where.
The simple
The Kohen Gadol's private.
It says it has the seal of the Kohen Gadol.
Like his private
the
thing.
logic.
So it was always under his.
Well,
it was his private stock.
Maybe it's more logical to assume that this was the seal that they used to indicate that it had been untampered with. It was from the temple stock. How do you prove it's a temple stock? You use the seal of the Kohen Gadol. He probably had more than one seal. Okay, so. But that could have been his personal seal that would have been used. This sounds like a good drush, and it's a good pshat. Someone I'm sure said it somewhere. I'm not denigrating,
I don't remember the rest.
But it's not necessarily that you must say it's the Kohen Gadol's private stock. This is what they probably use to seal it. The same way that you have wine that you have around you, if you seal it, then and you get it sealed, then you're not worried that a non-Jew may have come into contact with it, right? As if the wine is not cooked and not boiled, not pasteurized. Or not pasteurized at a high temperature. Okay. All right. Tanan Hasam. Okay, let's continue into this Gemara. We learned in a Mishnah somewhere else, and it's actually a Mishnah in Baba Kama. So this is a Baba Kama issue. Baba Kama is about what? What's the topic of Baba Kama? Damages, torts. Right? Baba Metzia happens to be made lost objects, finding objects, workers, relationships of workers and bosses. I'm sorry?
Like makos.
Well, Baba Kama is actually damages that you damage someone else. How you get prosecuted by you come to court and you may get makot. But you also may be responsible and liable for the damage that you created or that your ox created, or if you dug a pit and you left it uncovered, if someone falls into that, or an ox falls onto your pots and breaks them, or the ox eats things and it becomes destroyed. So all of this is Baba Kama. So here we have a case where you have a camel driver driving down, and so it creates a conflagration. Or you have, the first case is going to be a person who is a blacksmith. He's hammering, and as he hammers one his blacksmith, a spark shoots out and catches on fire. So all of these are examples of things that are occurring without intention. Tanan Hatzam. So we learned in the Bright and Baba Kama. Gets hayotze mitachat hapatish. If a spark comes out from under from the hammer. It's this big hammer that's used by the blacksmiths and pounding against steel, against iron. So the friction is going to cause heat and cause sparks. V'yotza v'hezek, and the spark goes out and causes a damage. Chayev. So I, the blacksmith, am chayev for my damage, even though I did not intend to do it. But I should have taken more care to make sure that I'm protecting anyone else from the damage, or I'm protecting my sparks don't go further than the actual anvil area. That's one case. Next case. Gamol shaton pishton. V'hu over b'shut rabim. I have a camel, and the camel is carrying pishton is flax. Okay, flax is flammable. It's a plant, and it passes in Rashut Rabim. V'nichnasa pishton l'tocha chanut. And there's a lot of bales of flax on either side of the camel, and as it goes down this narrow alley, or it's actually Rashut Rabim, the bales of flax go into the store. V'dalka b'nei rosh shel chanvani, and there is a lantern in the store for light, to light up this little store, and the bales go in and are ignited by the light of the chenvani, and the camel keeps going. V'hidlik et bira, and it causes the bira is the mansion, the palace, a large building, to catch on fire and burns down. Who's responsible? Not the chenvani, but the camel owner, right? And you can really picture how this would take place in a very crowded marketplace where people are pushing and shoving and squeezing together. And if the camel driver is not that careful, right? It's like, having a car scratch up against yours. Right? It happens. But the implication is that it created a lot of damage. It created a tremendous amount of damage. Who's responsible? The Bala Gomel. Okay? However, Hiniach envani et neiro mi bachutz. So if the storekeeper put his lantern or his light outside for illumination to light the store, should have kept it inside. But instead he put it outside, where it's more liable to cause the more damage people come into contact with, and the camel comes down the block, and the bales of pishton are ignited by the light, the lantern of the chenvani. The chenvani is chayav. Okay, so far so good. That's a fairly simple, direct case. So who's chayav? Normally the gamol driver. On the other hand, if the chenvani put it outside, it's going to be the chenvani will be chayav. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'ner Chanukah pater. The chenvani will be pater if on Chanukah the chenvani put his menorah outside. It's not simply a light for illumination. He has his menorah outside. And for those who are thinking, well, can't you see it looks like a Hanukkah menorah? What's the real mitzvah, the basic mitzvah of Hanukkah? One candle. One candle, right? One candle. This looks like the Chenvani, by the way, is living in the back of his store, right? So the Chenvani lives in the store, or at any rate, he's lighting there at the beginning because that's where he is during the time for the mitzvah of Hanukkah. And it's one candle, so you can't tell Hanukkah candle, not Hanukkah candle so clearly. It's not a special menorah. So if it's on Hanukkah, the Chenvani himself is pater, and because he was supposed to light it outside. Question? Clear? So far so good? So what do you see, by the way, what do you see about this mitzvah of Hanukkah? Where should you light the Hanukkah menorah? Outside your door. Okay. So the Gemara says, Amravina, Zotam Misham Rabba, or Amravina Mishmei the Rava, Zotmer Ner Hanukkah Mitzvah Lanicha Betoch Asara. So you see, not only is it a mitzvah to light the Hanukkah menorah outside your door, but you should light it within 10 tefachim of the ground. Okay, you should light it within 10 tefachim of the ground. Why? Because the Isal Kadaitach Lamala Me'asara, because if you could have lit it higher than 10 tefachim, if that's the ideal place is higher up, so Leimalei L'Havilela Nech Milamala Migam Overachvol, you should have put your menorah higher up, so it's not going to catch as a camel comes by, and the bales, the assumption is the bales of flax are on the sides of the camel, right? You should have put it higher up. Okay, so you see that the ideal place is 10 tefachim. The Gemara says, well, maybe not so. No, maybe really you could light it higher than 10 tefachim, but if we made the guy light it higher than 10 tefachim, that's going beyond what he has to do, and that's too much tircha. He's got to get up on a ladder, he's got to get some kind of contraption to put it higher up. So the place that people normally put things to outside the door is 10 tefachim off the ground. How high is 10 tefachim off the ground?
It's not high.
Not high at all. How high?
Inches.
Sorry, probably higher than 30 inches.
40,
Probably 40
40
inches. Probably 40 inches. 40 inches. Right? We've said, and we've talked about this in the past, this is probably about 28 inches, 26, 27, 28, the tabletops. 40 inches is probably where that door handle is, where the doorknob is. The lower doorknob is probably 40 inches. Okay? So that's not high. Why would you want to put it there? Why would that be the ideal place to put it? That's where people look.
You're supposed to see it, not make it.
Right, it's supposed to be Persumei Nisa. So now,
Maybe people who are shorter.
well, people are shorter, but also people tend to walk looking down. They don't really look up in the air. You bump into things.
I'm taller, so I don't look at the doorknob. I look at the mezuzah level. You know what I mean?
You are looking at mezuzah level.
this
You are
way?
not looking at mezuzah level. You're actually looking straight ahead and down. In fact, the hardest thing for people to get used to as they get older is when they get bifocals or continuous lenses, because as you walk or drive or move around, you tend to get confused. It makes people you get dizzy. Why do you get dizzy? Because you're actually looking down.
The reading part.
Right. So the reading part is meant for you to read. Right. You're reading down. But when you're walking, your vision is not tunnel vision. Your vision is like this.
It's the steps. Anyway.
So the reality is, you are looking down. You might be looking further ahead, so you don't get blindsided by something coming down the street. But you are looking directly ahead of you, so make sure you don't fall over a hole in the ground or something, or stand on something you don't want to stand on, right? So it's fairly reasonable. So actually, the ideal place, you can light a menorah higher, but the ideal place halachically to light the menorah is 10 tefachim off the ground, 40 inches off the ground. Now you live, what floor do you live on?
On the fourth floor.
Fourth floor. You're out of it.
No, but isn't the idea that wouldn't you be tempted to make use of the light? You're not supposed to do.
I don't know. You know what I have? We light Shabbos candles on the table, or if you light it on
Shabbos,
the...
yes.
So I'm not tempted to use the candle to make the two.
No, I'm saying the light. Read by the light.
Correct, so that's why you have a shamus. That's exactly why you have a shamus.
Exactly,
That's exactly why you have a shamus. That's because you are tempted to use the light. Well, think about where, those of you who live in houses on ground level, where do you light your menorah?
By the window.
By the window. So assuming that your ground level is ground level, sometimes it's not, it's about 10 tefachim off the ground. It's surely 10 tefachim off of your ground level, your floor. Now it happens to be that many people live higher, right?
Still
if you
live near the window. Doesn't matter how high.
Right, so you do light it near the window. From the halachic perspective, your Persumei Nisa is more inside, because even though people can look outside and look up at the fourth floor, they can't see how much of a menorah is up there. They can't really tell what it is. So if you are higher than, for example, if it's higher than 20 amos, that's really the max level. Higher than 20 amos, the Persumei Nisa is really not to the street, it's really to what's inside. People down in your apartment, people in the hall may come and open the door and so forth and see what's inside. Now, people have argued that today things are different, because buildings are higher. So the Persumei Nisa and what we look at is...
Nobody looks up to the 10th floor or to the 5th floor.
There's a whole industry of billboards. There's a whole industry of billboards and signs that are put up that people look up all the time. They catch your attention as you drive by, whether it's over a bridge or whether it's on top of a building.
I understand correctly.
I mean, I drive every morning down Young Street. There's, I don't know, all kinds. Now we have election posters.
Those are huge signs.
Okay, so make a huge menorah. I'm just saying,
you're
whatever it is.
That's why the Chabad has these huge menorahs.
Right, that's right.
For that reason.
But that's why the Chabad menorahs are usually, they should be less than 20 amos high. 20 amos is, let's say, 40 feet. They're less than 40. 40 feet is not so low, right? You need a cherry picker to get up on 40 feet, but it's not as high as the sky. So they want you to see it, and the truth is, if you drive up and down Bathurst, the menorah that they have, or the electric ones they light up, you see it as you drive by. But all I'm suggesting is that because we do get to see things that are higher, so even though halachically we don't really find tshuvot that say that lighting up on the 5th floor or 4th floor or 8th floor is going to be Persumei Nisa for people down below, the truth is today people do look up. People do look up all the time. You go back and compare it to what takes place 400 years ago, 300 years, 200 years ago. We had buildings that were 2 stories high, maybe 3 stories bakoshi, right? And above that was black. There was no illumination.
The building has 50 floors, and you live in the 50th.
So that's pushing it. What I'm saying is, you're right.
In New York.
Yes.
Just came back from New York.
No, it's not just New York.
My daughter lives in a building that's 50 floors.
In Manhattan.
Manhattan,
Yeah.
A new building, an old building?
That's right. You know,
Like
the
an old
upper west side.
I know, but it's an old building?
It's an old building.
Whatever it is, they just.
No, I just wonder if they built 50 floors.
Manhattan-
All the
Man-
buildings are huge there.
Manhattan is built in bedrock.
Okay, so you
Okay,
build
lesson for the engineers here.
Yeah.
Manhattan is built on bedrock. It's actual bedrock.
What does that mean?
It means a solid stone. It's
Stone.
rock. It's
Stone
solid
reverse.
rock all the
What are
way.
you saying? It's
Which
easy
means
to build?
you can drill into it and build the building. It's not going to move
Whereas here
around.
you're on soil. You have to
So here's soil. You have a certain
Moves,
limit.
You have to dig down deep
Right.
to get to the bedrock, so it doesn't move on you. You have to put a certain weight on the soil.
It's every area is different.
Yeah, like in the States, they
That's
don't have
Brooklyn Bridge.
basement. They don't have basement apartments.
Correct. Okay. So
There's no
Brooklyn
such
Bridge,
thing.
where?
In the States, in Manhattan.
Maybe because of the bedrock.
they don't have basement apartments.
No, there's nothing underground. There's no apartments.
Because of the
above
bedrock,
ground.
maybe.
I don't
Because
know.
of the bedrock.
Maybe.
Probably,
Maybe.
that's
But
why
that's-
you
But
say.
that's why you can have all these big skyscrapers.
Yeah,
Anyways,
black.
Exactly. Okay. let's
Bottom
go
line,
back.
the bottom line is yes, people live on the 50th floor, depending where they are. All I'm suggesting is that if you are above 40 feet, you're probably really lighting for the real pursuminisa is within yourself. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. And at the same time, there is ways to look at this and say that maybe pursuminisa is higher than 40 feet even today, because we used to looking up. Okay. At any rate, this is the case where the chenvani would be potter. By the way, here's the question. I don't have a good answer, or I know the answer is actually both ways. In this case of Hanukkah, right, the chenvani has his menorah outside. The gamal comes by, and is the chenvani chayav, the storekeeper or chayav? We just learned.
Oh.
No, he's not. So is the camel driver chayav? It doesn't really say. It says normally in the first case, if the light is inside, the camel driver is chayav. If the light is outside, the chenvani is chayav. If it's Hanukkah, the chenvani is not chayav.
Because he should have known. The camel driver should have known.
So it looks like the camel driver should have known, but it doesn't really say that.
Everybody's got Hanukkah menorah, so you should know. It's
Right, he should know. He's got to drive a little carefully.
Go in
Correct?
the middle of
Yeah.
the road.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's holiday season.
Otherwise, nobody
Okay.
would like.
But I just want to point out, it doesn't really say that clearly. It doesn't make it very clear what for us who is really chayav. Okay. All right. Let's move ahead in this Gemara here. What time is it? 9:20, 9:18. Good, plenty of time. I'm Rav Kana. Darsh Rav Nasan Bar Minyunim Mishmei the Rav Tanchum. Ner Shulchanagah Shehen Shenicha Lamala Michaf Amod Psula Kesuka Chamavoi. Okay, here's what it says. Anything above 20 amos is going to be puzzle. And Rashi says, the top Rashi on the page, so just read it very quickly. The Lo Shalta Be'ena Lamala Michaf Amah. People's eyes don't really have control. They don't really visualize. They don't see detail above 20 amot from the ground. Valeka Persuminisa is no Persuminisa. There's the same rule for sukkah and for a mavoi. What's the case with the sukkah? That you can't build a sukkah schach higher than 20 amot. Why not? Why can't you build a sukkah schach higher than 20 amot?
I don't know why.
So there are a couple reasons in the Gemara. One reason is because the shade will actually be skewered.
Shade?
Shade. Shade, S-H-A-D-E,
Oh, okay.
not shadim, shade. Shade versus sun, it's supposed to be more shade than sun,
Yeah.
but if it's that high, right, you end up having sunlight that crisscrosses, it really may not be a lot of shade. That's one answer the Gemara suggests. Another reason, and this makes a lot more sense, the Gemara suggests in Masechet Sukkah, is you won't realize there's schach above you.
It's so high up.
It's so high up. You don't know what's up there. You don't look up there the whole time. When I sit in a sukkah that's 7 feet high or 8 feet high, usually 7 feet high, I know where the schach is. It falls into my soup. When it's that high, 20 to 40 feet off the ground, I have no clue really what's above me. So, and the same thing for a mavoi. A mavoi Masechet Eruvin is talking about the...
But why would I don't understand this? You don't have a clue what's above the schach. Didn't he build the sukkah?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Isn't he
Forgive me.
aware?
This is the cynic in Yeres speaking.
What?
You do have the cynic.
I
You
know
do
it.
have, you do know it's above you, but you don't normally you're not actively aware of it every moment. Of course you know what's up there. You know, when you walk into your house, there's a ceiling on top of you, and you know there's
So
an attic
high, you
above
don't
the
notice
ceiling. But when I'm in the sukkah, I need to recognize that
That
there's
you
a
have a
protection element. Tzila de memusa. This is the protection of the Most High. There's a schach. There's a roof. That's a temporary roof that the water will come in, that the stars can be seen through. I have to visualize that. I have to realize this is symbolic of either the Ananei HaKavod, the clouds of glory, or the huts that the Jewish people built. If it's 40 feet up, I don't even know what's up there. I can't look that high. Right? Guys, this is what, a 10-foot ceiling here? 10 foot? Would we also agree on this?
That goes down to the old
Maybe
argument.
9 feet. I don't know.
Permanence, because something up
Correct.
high
It's
could
good.
mean.
All right,
it's
okay,
always
thank you.
forever,
I think one of the other answers the Gemara is saying,
something,
correct.
forever.
Thank you, Tuvi. One of the other answers the Gemara says, Masechet Sukkah, that if you make it more than 40 feet high or more than 20 amot high, it's a permanent structure. It's not a temporary structure. Thank you very much. There are three answers. Now we have all three.
Okay.
But one of them, and the one that I think is
I
very
see.
valid, is the fact that you are unaware of what's above you. You don't see the schach. The whole purpose of Sukkah is not the walls. Purpose is the schach. Okay, makes sense? And the other,
Why do you say it's not the walls?
because the walls can be made of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, period. The walls can be made of everything.
House is a wall.
Restrictions
What-
on the
After that, after I get a question, every circle.
Okay, one more point about so therefore menorah for Hanukkah can't be above 20 amot. The schach for the sukkah can't be above 20 amot, and a mavoi is you have like a doorpost over a alleyway. This is the mavui, also can't be higher than 20 amot. This is not the wires we're talking about in the eruv. This is a different kind of structure. It's a mavui. It's only a single alley, and there's only a horizontal piece of wood. This also can't be more than 20 amot off the ground, or one of the laws of eruvin, because once again the implication is you wouldn't really recognize it's there. You wouldn't understand the difference between a reshut harabim and a reshut yachid that's marked off to be a separate, private, semi-private alley. Yes. Question.
Right afterwards, it's something.
Okay.
nothing related.
All right. So this is about the maximum height. Therefore, is 20 amot. The minimum height is 10 tefachim. So let's go back to the question. What did the Gemara say? So why don't we tell the storekeeper to put his menorah up high, up on 20 amot, 19 amot? So the Gemara already answered that. Said because it's too much tircha. You have a society, people have to cooperate. So there's not only one person who has to make sure there's a safe environment. It takes a cooperative effort. The camel driver has to ensure that he has additional area or different clearances on Hanukkah night, as well as the Chenvani needs to take care of his lights and his menorah. Okay, so who said this last statement? Rav Kahana said that the following was darshan by Rav Nosson Bar Miyume in the name of Rabbi Tanchum. So that's not a frequent combination that Rabbi Kahana is going to say something that's what Rav Nachman Bar Miyume said in the name of Rav Tanchum. Those three names come together. It's very infrequent. It may only be one more time, and as a result, the Gemara says we're going to bring another statement that this group said, unrelated to Hanukkah. So I guess there is some relationship to Hanukkah. It may be the Kriyas Torah of the week of Hanukkah. Okay, it's usually the Shabbos of Hanukkah. The Shabbos of Hanukkah is usually Parshas Vayeshev. The Shabbos of actually it may not be true. The Shabbos of Hanukkah is either Vayeshev or Miketz, and the Shabbos after Hanukkah is either Miketz or Vayigash. So this year it's actually the Miketz. So this is taken from Parshas Vayeshev. So this is the Shabbos before Hanukkah sometimes. What's the case? Has nothing to do with Hanukkah. This is unrelated to Hanukkah. V'haborek ein bo mayim. So this is when Joseph goes out to visit his brothers, and they plot against him. And Joseph comes to see if their other flocks are doing. He goes to Shechem, or he goes to Emek Hebron. And they come there, and what do they want to do with him? They want to kill him, and they don't want to kill him, so they throw him into the pit. It says, "V'aborek ein bo mayim." The pit is empty, and there's no water in it. So you know how we look at normally drashot in the Torah. Every time there's an extra word, it comes to tell me something. And Mimashma shenemar v'abor reik ein yodeh she'en bo mayim. The fact that it says that the pit is empty, don't I know there's no water in there? Elamat Talmud lomer ein bo mayim. What does it mean there's no water? It was really empty, but it wasn't empty. Mayim ein bo avon nechashim v'akrabim yesh bo. It was empty of anything significant, but there were snakes and there were scorpions inside the pit. Famous drasha, they threw Joseph into the pit. What did they hope would happen? There'd be an industrial accident. They hoped that he would, something would happen, they wouldn't be responsible. So, but this is a very famous drasha that the Torah SHABBAT, or that Rav Tanchum here says, or Rav Kanan Rav Tanchum says, this pit that was empty, they threw him, it was not such an innocent pit. Okay, here's the question for you. Do you everybody understand the drash?
I understand the drash.
Here's the question. So if the pit is empty, so what's in it? There's no water. So there's no water, what's in it? There are snakes and scorpions. So if there's snakes and scorpions, the pit is not empty. So how could it say the pit is empty?
It's empty of water.
So Josh is empty of water. What were you going to say?
No, when I learned,
Well, that's a good question. Brothers know there's snakes and scorpions. That's open to us to understand.
that's midrash.
It's not clear. Right? It's not clear. The assumption that you're trying to getting is they did know. My question is a very basic question. In the drash has to fit into somehow the words. If there are snakes and scorpions, the pit is not empty. How could the Torah say the pit is empty?
When I learned with Norman Smith. When I learned it, we took one of the dictionaries says bore was a water cistern.
Okay.
They have water cisterns.
That's very clever.
And so a water cistern is maybe whitewashed, so there couldn't have really been
snakes and scorpions.
I'm not arguing with the Medrash. So when it says it was empty, there was no water. It was a water cistern. It was empty, and there was not even a little bit of water there. That's how I learned it.
So how do snakes and scorpions get in? They climb them from the outside.
I don't go. I know that's the Medrash. I don't hold to that.
Okay, so Archie is saying that's actually a good answer. That's the creative answer. The bore is empty. That means it's referring to a water cistern which was smeared with lime to make or caulking or some kind of mortar to make sure it was waterproof. That's an excellent idea. And therefore, the idea is not that there wasn't anything else like dirt and sand that may have fallen in or snakes, but there was no water. Good.
That's how I learned it.
Next answer. Anyone else? I don't know that I have the only answer that has the monopoly on this, but I would say the simple pshat is if you have a snake inside a pit and it's not a water cistern, it creeps in a hole, creeps in a little crevice.
So it's not there.
You don't see it, right? Snakes and scorpions make their livings by not being outside, not being visible. Especially scorpions. You always hear about people being bitten by scorpions. They're hiding. They hide in shoes. They hide in drain pipes. Right? The snakes come up the toilet. Snakes are not out. They're not out there. So you can look at a bore. This may not be your water cistern bore, right? But they look inside anything, and there's a crack and there's a crevice where the snake is. Did the brothers know that there were snakes or scorpions in? Not clear. The assumption here is that yes, they did, and they probably were trying to plot against Yosef. On the other hand, we know that Reuven does not want to kill him, so maybe they did, or maybe they didn't. Right?
Actually, why did he need to throw him into a pit? I mean,
They were trying to figure out what to do with him.
To figure out what to do, we have to throw him into the pit.
Well,
Where are they going to put him?
There were 10 Jews. Do you ever go to a shul and they say you should start, you shouldn't start, you should start? It's time for end of Shema, beginning of Shema time.
That's right. Around the area.
Yeah,
it was empty and they put him in.
Right, true story.
They lowered him in and he couldn't get out.
Yeah. So they were. When we were in the summer, we went jeeping one day in the Judean desert, and they took us in to see one of these water cisterns, which was empty. It had been broken open over the centuries, but you could see where it had been lime covered. Had it really been sealed the way it was, with just an opening from the top, which is how it was meant to catch water.
How deep was it?
So the way it was set up, you actually could come in almost sideways because it had broken into like a cave. But you could see where if it had been sealed up, it would have been very difficult to get out. It wasn't like falling into a well. It was more set up. It was set up that it would catch the runoff. It's catching the runoff off of the natural slopes that are around it.
It's difficult to get up. I mean, you couldn't.
You had to go up. You had to climb up. You had to climb up. Basically, I'm saying this was an very old system. No one knew how old it was, but it had been worn down and it was open, right? So that's why it's one of the things they actually showed us as we went over there. But the bottom line is, if you go to Masada, you see this all the time. This is how people survived in this area. The flash floods that we hear about today that flood roadways were also used to catch the water and retain it. It's not that hard. At any rate, so yes. Did the brothers know it? Possibly yes. You could argue the brothers did not know it, but this is still, it's underscoring not so much the vindictiveness or the viciousness of the brothers, but rather the miraculous nature of Joseph surviving. Okay, that takes us up to this. Let's just do one or two more lines. Amar Rabba, this brings us back to Hanukkah. I don't want to end up with Joseph in the pit. Amar Rabba, ner Hanukkah mitzvah lanicha b'tefach hasmucha lepetach. Where should you light the Hanukkah menorah? On the tefach. How much is the tefach? 4 inches. That's close to the door, to the opening of the door. And where should you put it on the door? Where in relationship to the door should you put it? So, Ravacha Brei Rava Amar Miyamin, on the right side. Rav Shmuel Amar Difni Amar Mismol. Obviously 2 opinions, 1 opinion on the right side, 1 opinion on the left side. V'hilchasa, and the halacha is Mismol, that you put it on the left side of the door. Ketei Shedei Ner Chanukah Mismol Umezuzah Miyamin. When you walk into the door, that you have when you enter into a house, the right side is going to be the mezuzah, right? As you go into the room and you're looking at the door now from the outside, and the left side as you look at the door will be the Hanukkah menorah. So that would be the ideal place, and the implication of course is that you've got the mezuzah and the Hanukkah menorah surrounding the Jew as he comes in and outside of his house. In Eretz Yisrael many people do light outside. People in the diaspora don't do so much for a lot of reasons, primarily environment and the fact that many people out there walking by outside our houses are not Jewish. It may create more of a sakana putting a candle outside that you're not watching when people walk by and kids walk by and they're not members of our faith community, and may be less respectful of a burning candle. So that's just the practicality of the facts on the ground. And but if you had an ideal situation, you could light the menorah outside your door. You could light the menorah outside your door in your hall, Mr. Moeller.
I guess condo rules wouldn't allow it.
Condo rules will be on top of
you. Are
you.
you kidding?
So why would you
Otherwise,
light it on the right?
You don't have condo rules. You have
What was the reason on the right? So I'm going to imagine the reason on the right may actually be that you'll see it better. When you come into a house, you're looking at the menorah, you look at the mezuzah. You know the mezuzah. So automatically, I mean, I don't know if people walked on the right side, people walked on the left side, but assuming that everybody walked on the right. Now I know this may not work for the British and the other people in kind of Hong Kong, but if you walk on the right, then you're actually going to see how the door is set up. So I'm not sure the default is to have the doorknob on the right side or not. I don't know.
Oh, you mean in England?
In England or in the ancient world. But the bottom line is, I think because the mezuzah is on the right, that's the natural place that you normally put it.
Because a right-handed person, irrelevant of how you go.
Maybe, could be, yeah.
A right-handed person who grabs it.
So you could argue it both ways. The answer is if you can't light it outside, so you light it inside. You can't light it inside, you light it a window, light it on a table. But listen, the concept, the value is about lighting that you're surrounded by a Jewish faith community, mitzvot and symbols, and I think that's actually something very beautiful. We don't get a chance to do it here. I don't know what to say. I'm always afraid. I always have this nightmare of lighting menorah, and we do light at the window. I'm going to get a rock thrown from my window, but even in Vaughan region. But you know what? You don't know. Anyways, Baruch Hashem, I haven't had. Anyways, we'll stop here and we'll pick up again next week. Next week, once again, I said the next couple of weeks is really going to be about Hanukkah before eventually we'll get back to talk about Shabbos. But it's a good piece really about the source material for Hanukkah. Okay, welcome back. We missed a couple of weeks because of this and that, and here we're back on schedule.